Hi everyone, welcome back to Mission Over Mood. Today I wanted to tackle trauma bonding because so many of us get caught in confusing cycles of love and hurt and don't even realize what's happening. Um, my goal is to validate anyone who's ever felt trapped, give you practical steps and reclaim your power, and build a community where we can share experiences and heal together. Let's dive in. So, guys, first I wanted to start off by explaining to you what trauma bonding is and codependency. Um, a trauma bond is when someone stays attached to a person who hurts them because their bad behavior is mixed with kindness. Imagine if you get yelled at 1 minute and then hugged the next. The back and forth makes you cling harder, hoping for good moments. I know we've all experienced that. Our parents yelling at us and then taking us out to eat. That's kind of like trauma bonding. And maybe that's not a great example, but that's like an example that I think we've all went through. So that's just one example. But codependency is when you rely too much on another person to feel okay about yourself. You might put their needs first, ignore your own, and feel anxious if they're upset, losing sight of your own feelings and boundaries. See, I've been in situations where a person has been codependent on me, like their happiness predicated upon me being happy, and sometimes whenever you're so busy worried about making someone else happy, you lose sight of your own happiness and who you are as a person, because what I've been taught is you cannot like try to make others happy all the time because people are so unsatisfiable. You can do one thing and then that's good, but then they're like, but, they always got to add a but or something. So it's like you shouldn't be too codependent on someone in a relationship, in any relationship, friendship, whatever, where you are putting everything about them first and putting you last. So this is why trauma bonding is a powerful, often unhealthy emotional attachment that develops in relationships characterized by cycles of abuse or intense highs and lows. So to go into details of each one, I am going to start with trauma bonding. It's definitely an intense emotional attachment formed through a cycle of abuse followed by kindness or remorse. So they'll be like, "Oh, babe, I only did that because this, and I love you and I care about you, and I was acting jealous because this and that." That is trauma bonding. Um, some key points to look at: intermittent reinforcement, kindness and cruelty alternate, unpredictability, making the good movements feel especially powerful. So, like I was just giving an example of, yes, it's okay to be protective of your girlfriend, but when it becomes like you are using your protection um, in a malicious way to say, okay, this is why I hit you, or this is why I'm uh, controlling you and not letting you go nowhere, is because I love you so much. Yes, it's good to love, but it's not good to try to override someone's free will. Another thing is survival mechanisms. Victims cling to the hope that abuse will stop, so they stay despite the harm. This is likely common in abusive romantic relationships, cults or extremist groups, kidnapping or hostage situations. There is some key points, key signs of trauma bonding in any of those situations, which would be craving the abuser's approval after each reward, like kindness or apology. So um, if you do something to upset them, you start to be overkind or apologetic, or like almost begging them for forgiveness, justifying or minimizing abusive episodes. Like, for example, if you're the victim, you probably will feel like um you'll probably feel like, well, he did this because this, or she did that because that. Like, it's not that big of a deal. You'll probably even get upset with your family over this person because your emotions is attached to this person. And so you'll make reason and excuses for different episodes. And, honestly, eventually that gets people not to be able to protect you or be there for you because you are minimizing the abuse and, like overdoing it with taking up for the person. And sometimes you can feel helpless or trapped despite knowing the relationship is harmful. So you can feel like, man, if, some people don't have that high of a self esteem, and you can feel like, man, well, if, excuse me, if he leaves, I'm not going to be able to get no one else, or vice versa. You're all I got, you all that I need. Not even exploring your options of what's out there, and what better you can have in a situation like that. Now we pivot to codependency. Now, an unhealthy reliance on another person's approval or validation to feel safe, worthy, or complete. Some factors that includes people pleasing. You put others' needs first, even at your own expense, meaning at your own happiness. You might even get in trouble at work. You might, fall out with a family member. You're putting their happiness before, your own self, and that's not good. Poor boundary making. So you might have a difficulty in saying no or setting limits, leading to emotional exhaustion. And so as you keep doing that, your glass becomes emptier and emptier and emptier, and where you can't give any more. And then eventually you just probably explode on that person or just walk away. And sometimes you have identity loss, like self worth becomes tied to the other person's mood or behavior. So again, I'm gonna reapproach what I said earlier when I said, you're relying on how they are and how pleased they are to make you feel like you are doing something right, or make you feel like, you're you can be happy now because they're happy. Um, and then we have some tall tale signs of anxiety. I'm sorry, of codependency. It'll be things like anxiety or guilt if you're not constantly helping or fixing someone else's issues. Fear of abandonment or being bad if you assert your own needs. Low self esteem that fluctuates based on others' approval. Um, I want to dive into the fact of fear of abandonment or being bad. I really feel like a lot of women struggle with that. I'm not going to say only women, but a lot of women struggle with uh they don't want to be alone. They don't want to be by themselves. And so a lot of times we settle for men that treat us some type of way. And vice versa. Men has a history of doing it too, but the volume of that is not as high as women. We settle because, oh, he may be taking care of all the bills. Oh, he may be offering me stability. Oh, he may be having good, intimacy with me. So we settle for being treated some type of way because at that moment we don't have a high self-worth of ourselves. And that's where it comes with, you have to do some internal diving and digging into yourself and fixing those key component issues so that you could like not feel that abandonment. If he walks away or you choose to walk away, you can go ahead and just be like, you know what, I'm worth much more than this, and I value myself more than what you're giving me, and I can no longer accept how you're treating me. And that right there is definitely setting the tone and setting those boundaries needed in a relationship. So with that all being said, now the question is, how do they even intertwine? How does um, trauma bonding and codependency feed each other in a reinforcing loop? So, dependence, one of the key points is dependence on highs. Trauma bond, you chase the rare affectionate moments. Codependency, you believe your worth hinges on earning those moments. Boundary erosion, codependency, you ignore your limits to cater to the other's demands. Trauma bond, that self neglects keep you tethered to the abuser. Um, Rationalization and self blame. Trauma bonding, they didn't mean to hurt me. Codependency, if we're better, they wouldn't behave this way. if I were better, I'm sorry, they wouldn't behave this way. And last but not least, as I mentioned in my last point, was the fear of abandonment. So, the fear of abandonment with trauma bonding, you can't leave because of the hope for change. And then the codependency part of it is you dread being alone or failing the other person. And so we get stuck in these loops of uh, rationalizing, fear of abandonment, boundary erosion, dependence on highs to get us by and get us through in a relationship when ultimately it just ruins not only the relationship, it ruins your mental health, it ruins your self-worth, it ruins your decision making, it ruins relationships with other people because you have allowed this one person to manipulate and destroy who you are as a person. Um, and with it having such a high impact on your well-being, you end up going on emotional roller coasters like chronic anxiety, depression, mood swings. You have reduced self-worth, like your self-esteem is tied entirely to the other person's behavior. So like if they are giving you the go or green light with a situation, you feel like, okay, yeah, like I'm doing good. Like I feel very good about myself because he gave me or she gave me that go. And you should not tie your self esteem to someone giving you a yes or a no. Um, it can also impact your well-being with you having isolation, like gradual loss of outside support as you focus on the dysfunctional bond. Like I stated earlier, like you can lose family members because you're focusing so entirely on having this person that you're not seeing that everyone else is being slowly pushed away. And then that falls into the categories of narcissism too if you're in a relationship. It's just a whole thing that it spirals to. And honestly, because you love that person and people may love you, they just don't love that situation for you, okay? And so sometimes people will step back or back to allow you to see for yourself, if it doesn't become too late, because sometimes people don't make it out of relationships like that or situations like that, even if it's a friend or, sometimes it's family members that you trauma bond with, and it ends up ruining your marriage or your relationship because you have such this bond with this person based on something that you've been through with this person in the past that it's no longer serving you, but you keep feeding it by staying what in compliance or like what can I say, like faithful to this situation with this person because we went through this together. It might be something as small as or as big as losing a parent or something, going through a divorce, your parents going through a divorce, and so you guys got stuck at that moment when your parents went through a divorce, and you are essentially trauma bonding. And so nothing, you won't let anything in the middle of that, even if it was your wife, even if it was your husband. You're like, well, nope, I am not going to let your feelings and thoughts override this person because you don't know what we've been through. It's not about what you've been through. It's about knowing to release and knowing when, okay, it's enough. Like at this point, we are trauma bonding. We're not even bonding for real. We're bonding based on a trauma experience. So we have to know the difference. And that brings us to long-term trauma. You're risking yourself of PTSD, chronic stress, difficulty trusting future relationships, or even the current relationship that you're in, because you know that you have did things to your partner or to your friend or whatever based on trauma that you had with someone else. You have neglected or treated someone some type of way, so you fear that it'll be done to you, or and sometimes you do have in the back of your mind like, dang, I know I'm doing this, but I really love this person. And ultimately, that's really no good because ultimately you lose who you love, you lose who you want to be around, you lose people lose respect for you and the situation because how can someone value you and you're not valuing yourself. You have to set the tone. Like, it doesn't matter what stage, how many years you've been in a relationship, how much time you've been in a relationship. You have to learn how to set the tone and set the stage and make boundaries. Never let someone like make you feel like you have to be happy. The only time you can be happy is if they're happy and satisfied. If someone is so codependent, if you're so codependent like that, you have to be able to break those cycles and know that you have support. Know that you can be better than what they say you are and what they're giving you the green light on. And so I just want to give you guys um, 5 steps to at least attempt to break these cycles of trauma bonding and codependency. And so we're going to start with education and awareness. Learn the patterns. Knowledge reduces confusion. Learn when you learn when someone is trauma bonding or has a pattern of codependency. And if you're seeing that even within your own relationship or a relationship that you have with someone, you should approach the situation and talk about it and maybe seek counseling or something like that, or whatever you got to do to become a better person and not be codependent on someone else's emotional status to give you verification about yourself. You need to rebuild boundaries. Number two, practice saying no and honoring your own needs. Like, if you don't want to do something or you don't want to agree to something, you can say, you know what? No, I don't feel comfortable with that. Or, you know what? No, that's not something that I'm into, or whatever the case is. Even with a friend, they're like, hey, let's go partying. I'm just saying, for example, okay, they like partying. You don't like partying. You can easily say, you know what, friend, I don't mind hanging out with you, but I don't like going to nightclubs. I don't like big scenes like that. And focus on standing your ground with that and honoring what you need from a relationship or what you need from a situation. Not about making them happy or whatever, because it doesn't serve any purpose to make anyone happy when you're being dishonest. If you're doing something just to make them happy, that ultimately does not make them happy. It makes you lose that person. Number three, expand your support network. Reconnect with friends, family, or support groups, or anyone that can support your needs and support your help you get through that trauma bonding, help you get through the codependency, because it is so vital to have a support system that you actually can listen to and open up to and help you get there. Because when you get through that step, you feel so empowered. You feel so like, man, I needed this. And so you always want to take those steps necessary to rebuild those relationships and stay in contact with people that love you and support you the most. Also, I did mention seeking professional help. Number four. Number five, self compassion. Treat yourself with kindness. Celebrate small wins and small victories. If you even hit a milestone as to if you're, let's just say, you're with a guy and he wants you to answer the phone call on the first ring and you answered it on the third ring, that's a win, girl. Like, you should be like, you know what? I'm finally setting that boundary. Like, you're not gonna run my life like that. I'm my own person, you're your own person. And even men, you guys go through some things like we do too as women, far as being in trauma bonded relationships, or you know people holding things over your head and thinking that, oh, we're supposed to bond on this level because we've been through this and this and this and this and this. Sometimes it's time to let things go. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's time to let things go and grow away from it, out of a situation. So, just celebrating those small victories and wins is always going to, get you the best results out of what you're wanting and what you're expecting from any uh relationship, or yeah, a relationship that you're in or pursuing, or family relationship, friend relationship, whatever. I hope you guys took something from this, and maybe you guys can share your experience with me on ways that you have trauma bonded or ways that you have had a codependency or you have experienced it within relationships with people and how it made you feel. What point did it bring you to within your mind with a person or within that situation? I want you guys to remember that recognizing both trauma bonding and codependency is the first step towards reclaiming your autonomy and building healthier, more balanced relationships. And so until next time, guys, I thank you for listening in to the network today, Mood Over Mission. Remember, this is the podcast where mission over mood, sorry. Remember, this is the podcast where your mission is always first. And in this episode, we must put the mission of owning who we are, knowing who we are, trusting who we are, and loving who we are. And until we can get to that point, then we'll be forever trapped in this loop of trauma bonding and codependency. See you guys next time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and let us know what you think down in the comments below.